Do you know the biggest myth that musicians believe when it comes to their marketing? It's that to create content is somehow selling out, right? Or that you're cheapening the artistic integrity of your music by creating content, whether it's short form or long form. But what if I told you that perhaps marketing is the one thing that separates you from where you are now to where you want your career to be ultimately? Because the problem isn't that marketing is some big bad thing. Marketing has always existed. It's just either whether it's consciously good marketing or unconsciously bad marketing. So the problem isn't marketing. The problem is no one's ever really been shown how to market without being a cheesy salesperson, right? So in this video, I'm going to be giving you the step-by-step breakdown, the step-by-step method to creating an authentic marketing plan so that you can shine through as who you actually are. You're not pretending to be someone that you're not, but you're going to be attracting the right people. And so throughout this video, you might find yourself looking at marketing a completely different way that's going to accelerate your music business. So the first thing that we need to look at is we have to have the right frame of marketing. A lot of artists have a very persona-based way of looking at marketing, right? And so I like to look at it like this. In marketing, if you're good at it, you're focusing on connection. If you're bad at it, you're focusing on convincing people. So what do I mean by that? In good marketing, we're trying to establish a connection. We're trying to create a piece of content, a piece of marketing that someone sees, and that creates a resonation, right? People are like, ooh, that resonates with me. I feel that, right? We're trying to create that connection, that bond between artist and fan. Most people's marketing that I've seen is dedicated to convincing people that they're cool and should be taken seriously. Now, notice the distinction there. In one piece of content, you're putting out stuff because you want people to perceive you a certain way. You want them to think, oh, I'm really cool, right? So I'm going to try to convince them that I'm super cool by having a music video that's professionally shot. Or I'm going to try to convince them by dressing a certain way that maybe isn't authentically me, but maybe they'll look at me more. That's what a lot of marketing that I've seen from artists and musicians looks like. It's them trying to convince people that their music and their brand is cool, as opposed to trying to connect with people by doing like content that connects with stories and personal, basically you want to relate your content to some kind of life experience that you know you and your fans share. Or even if you don't share, you could create a general, we talked about this in the previous video, you want to create content where even if the song has a specific meaning that it doesn't relate generally to your dream audience, you can find the general meaning, the general interpretation of your song that anybody could relate to and use that for your marketing, right? So notice the mindset difference. In one instance, we're like, what would our fans resonate with? What does their life look like? What do their challenges look like? What are the things they're trying to do? What are the roadblocks that they're running into? And if you look at that, you start to see, oh, my song connects with this aspect of their life. My song connects with this aspect of their life. And you can start creating marketing that's tied around connecting with people with things that would actually connect with them because they actually understand it's something they care about. In the other side of the equation, it's like, how do I get people to think I'm cool? The perspective is all off, right? So notice the difference. It's like being fan-centered versus being self-centered. You get the idea, like if you go to most artists' websites, what's the first thing you see? Their logo, nice and huge, right? Or a big picture of the artist or the group. It's just this big display of like, look at me. Where the most effective websites, when it comes to logos and things like that, you want the logo to be kind of small and in the corner. You want it out of the way so that the eyes don't just go to a logo, the eyes go to some words where we can drive action, like signing up for an email list, or going to our merch store, joining our fan club, clicking on this link that takes them to Spotify or wherever, right? We want to drive their eyes to text that is going to direct them in a way that is favorable for our music business. There's nothing really favorable about them staring at our logo and having to scroll up 3 times just to see some information that could be of value to them. You understand? And that's what most artists are doing. They're thinking about, how can I be perceived as cool? How can I position myself so that it looks really cool? And then someone shows up to my website, my logo's nice and big and official. It's like, stop trying to convince people. Just connect with them, right? By putting out a piece of content that shows what your song is about or what you as an artist are about, right? You're going to connect with people who actually resonate with that. And sure, not everybody will resonate with that. That's normal. Repulsion is just as much a part of marketing as attraction is. Okay, so you have to be able to be okay with the idea that you are going to repulse people. And people are like, oh, I don't want to be repulsive. It's like, well, you're gonna be repulsive to somebody, but you're also going to be attractive to somebody. I'm not talking about looks. I'm not talking about dating. I'm talking about your marketing. But you get the idea, right? You are going to be attracting the people who do resonate with who you are as a person. Now, what are the methods that you can use to start attracting those people? Okay, so I get it, Dax. I have to look at it from the perspective of my fans. I want to be fan-centric and not, I want to be fan-centered and not self-centered. So what do? The first thing that I would do is start creating an arsenal of stories. You need to leverage stories. Now, stories could be anything. Sometimes they don't even have to be your stories. You can borrow stories from other people. And why do you want to do this? Stories can serve multiple purposes. One, they can just be entertaining and funny, right? So like I've got a story. I'll give you an example. I've got some stories where people have brought us like 2 pounds of crawfish and then a pound of shrimp. And I'm not gonna tell the whole story. Obviously, I don't want this whole video just to be me telling my stories. But there was the end of the night. We were given a lot of alcohol for free by the venue, and when you mix a bunch of alcohol and a bunch of crawfish, I didn't partake in the fish or the alcohol, quite frankly, but everyone else did, and it ended up being a very hilariously bad night. I'll just put it that way. If you were in Crowley, Louisiana, at Sam's Place, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You were there and you witnessed the debacle that went down. But if you're not there, I'm sorry, you just had to be in that corner of Louisiana at the right time to see it. But here's the idea. You want to collect it, one that can be entertaining. So you're just telling a story that people are going to like watch and they're going to be like, that was funny, or that was a cool, entertaining story. You met some big famous celebrity. Or, we sat down at a restaurant and right behind me was Dua Lipa or whatever. You know what I mean? Like any kind of story that you can leverage that would be entertaining for the fans. They could be educational, right? Something that you've learned. And when I say educational, that could be educational in the sense that you learned a life lesson, from some kind of story or interaction that you had throughout your life or in the music business, right? You could tell stories that are relevant to your release. So the stories that led to the inception of a song lyrically. That's another great place that you can start to leverage is, okay, what is my song about? How can I create more compelling stories about my song? See, like most people's problem is not that there's not a story, but they just think there's not a story there. So for instance, I was at a event that I was hosting with my private clients, and I looked at one of my clients and I said, okay, we're going to practice our storytelling skills. I want you to tell me how you got your shoes. And they were like, these shoes? Like the ones you got on your feet? And they're like, so I went to the mall and I saw them on the rack and I thought they looked really cool. And so I went and bought them. And I was like, that's not what we were looking for, but we do have a consolation prize in the back. No, I'm just kidding. But what happened is that's what most people think is like, oh, well, there's not really a story here. It's just I went to the mall and I got some shoes and that's the end of the story. I'm like, do you guys not remember being on like deadline for an essay and having to kind of throw in some extra words to fluff it up a little bit? Come on, I know you guys have that skill still deep down from elementary and junior high and high school. I know it's waiting to be utilized again. Now, the idea is not that you fill the story full of useless information. That's what we used to do back in school, right? Just to get the minimum word count so we could get a good grade. What we're looking to do is not word salad, but to actually like create emotional connection in there. So let's use the shoe story as an example. How do you make that an interesting story? Well, you focus on emotion. That's what you need to do in your stories. You need to focus on emotion. Okay, what's the emotion here? So I said, okay, let's try it this way. Are you having some trouble coming up with a good story? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay, let me show you how I would have told that story. I would have been like, so I woke up one day and I put my shoes on, and I've had these shoes for a very long time, so they're kind of they're past broken in. They're sort of worn out, right? And so every time I get in them, they're just not comfy anymore. And you have to like keep tightening them tighter and tighter and tighter because the shoe is like loosening. I don't know what keeps happening. It's crazy. These are old. So I'm sitting there walking with these shoes. And then all of a sudden, I'm hanging out in the mall with my friends. You know, I'm kind of talking to them, but I'm sort of half distracted because I don't want my shoes to fall apart while I'm walking. You know, I'm kind of embarrassed about it, you know, a little bit like I'm the dude with the weird hobo shoes over here. And then I turn my head to the left and it's like the light struck me and I was just mesmerized. And I just found myself just entranced by it. And I was just like, oh, I need those shoes. I saw those on Amazon the other day. You ever see something online and then just all of a sudden you see it in person, it's in front of you, you're like, oh, I don't have to wait for shipping. This is great. Right? And so all of a sudden I walk in there and I was like, I hope they have my size because I wear a size 13. And so because I wear a size 13, sometimes getting my size is a bit of a problem. And so I go in there, I was like, I really would like this shoe. Do you have a size 13? And then they did, we might. And so I just sat there anxiously like, please have my size. I don't want to be the hobo shoe having friend walking through the rest of the day, you know, inside the mall with these shoes. And then luckily he walks out and he said, you grab the last pair. And so then I pull out my wallet and I looked and I had just enough cash. I literally had $1 extra. If it had been $1 more from tax because I was in some kind of area where sales tax was higher, I wouldn't have been able to buy it. But I had just enough money and now I walk around and I feel super confident. Like, do you see the difference between those stories? In one of them, it was just like very just fact, matter of fact, like I woke up, I went to the mall, I saw them, I bought them, end of story. Not a very compelling story. When you focus on the emotion of, I have these bad shoes, and I don't like that I have these bad shoes, they're uncomfortable. In fact, I'm kind of self-conscious because I don't like how people are looking at me with the fact that these shoes, like they're all I have at the moment, and they're kind of worn down. Like I'm tying the story into the emotional factor. So for you, it may just be like one day I went and I bought a guitar and it's a good guitar. It's like, and then I wrote this song the first day I had the guitar. It's like, no, it's like I was sitting there in the store and then this guitar caught my eye and I just had this thought in the back of my head, like, I could get that today. And so, but I was like, wait a minute, I need to play on this thing. And so once I got it in my hands, I could just tell this instrument was going to be perfect. It was like it was made for my hands. Like, you see what I'm saying? The way that you could tell that story is more focused on the emotions that you're feeling. And so that way, when you finally get to the climax of the story, like, you know, I'll skip through a bunch of the details. So I'm in the car and I just bought this and I had to put it on credit because I didn't have enough cash on me. And so I've got it, it's in my car and I'm on the way home. I can't wait to plug this thing in and just rock out on it. And I do, and the first thing that comes out is this riff. And then you go into your song, right? That's one little example of trying to pull more emotion out of a story that's simply about, like, I went to the guitar store, I saw the cool guitar, I bought it, I took it home, and then I wrote a song on it. Like, that's not a very compelling story. Even if you told it in a slightly better tonality, that would be a pretty bad short form piece of content. But if you're telling the story of, like, have you ever been in a music store and then you just saw an instrument that you're like, it was like Wayne's World, you know, like, oh yes, she will be mine, you know, and you can evoke more emotion, things that they would be feeling if they were in that predicament, right? We're artists, and I think one of the things that we forget is that we're naturally, if you're writing songs, right, you're naturally a storyteller. And some of you may be like, well, Dax, I'm an instrumentalist. I don't do the lyric side of the music. I'm just the person that writes the music. I'm like, you're still a storyteller. You're a storyteller with sound as opposed to words. Because songs tell a story. When you go from one section to the next and to the next, there's a story that's unfolding there. So artists and musicians are natural storytellers. But for some reason, we get this mental block because of what I talked about earlier, because of the whole focusing on our persona and trying to like show off and convince people. We get all these mental blocks so that we can't just put out content designed to connect with people and be okay with the fact that maybe we didn't present it the best way, or we're still figuring out how to present things. And so when you put it out there the first time, it gets 100 views, 200 views or something. You get capped off at the 250 views, right? Either way, that's a step forward. That's progress, because now there's an opportunity for people who are like-minded and would be a good fit to connect with you. But if we don't post the content and we sit around thinking, am I a sellout if I post this kind of content? Am I going to be perceived a certain way? It's like, let people perceive you how they're going to perceive you to a certain extent. Now, at the end of this video, one of the things that we're going to go over is branding and how you get people to associate with you the way you want them to, not the way they just openly decide to. But some people who are dedicated to not liking you, there's no amount of branding that could fix that. So you just let them have their opinions. But the people who are going to be a good fit will be attracted to it. So we have to use stories as magnets to pull people in, to actually understand who we are as an artist. There's things that we can dive into, like I talked about. There's educational, there's experience or entertaining experiences that you've had. There's the sort of how the music came to be stories. There's all these different kind of wells we could tap from. And there's even more than that. You could even pull different life lessons out. Like I've got a whole bunch of stories that I can tell just at any given moment because I've collected these stories. I have a note in my phone with the titles that I've given these stories. And so yeah, you just want to get as many stories in your arsenal as possible. So don't feel like you have to have like a document full of the stories themselves. I have a document with the titles, and the titles are enough to make me remember the whole story. So that's kind of how you want to make the titles of these stories in your notes, is so it's easy to remember just from the title. Like one of the ones I talk about here that's really easy is John Mayer's Miserable Millionaire Friend. Just by saying the title, I could do the entire story right now, because I know just from the title what the rest of it's going to be, right? So the next phase that we need to go to is like, okay, I understand that I need to have the right frame of marketing. I need to tell stories instead of, trying to position myself as some cool hotshot musician. I need to actually figure out how I can connect with my audience via stories. Now, how do I actually establish my brand so that the associations they have with me are the ones that I want, right? By and large. So what you can do is think of it like this. Now, you have two different plans that we're going to execute here. We're going to talk about branding and then how you actually post, in a sense. So let's talk about branding first. You have about 5 questions that you want to ask yourself, okay, and really clearly define. And by the way, some of this can shift around per release, right? Some of y'all are releasing albums at a time, and so each album kind of comes with its own theme and its own kind of vibe. You can shift some of that up depending. So don't think this is like you're setting this in stone forever. Some of that stuff kind of is, but everything is pretty malleable. So understand that. First thing that you want to do is establish like color, okay? Color has a very big impact psychologically on people. For example, there's a reason a lot of restaurant chains use the color red, because the color red has been shown to induce hunger, right? So that feeling that you get from seeing red, hunger, restaurants are like, oh yeah, we're going to definitely use that color in our logos and our restaurants because we want that impact to make them feel hungry. Banks love to use blue. Why? Because blue makes you feel safe and secure, right? And so they use a lot of blue coloring because obviously if you're putting your money somewhere, you want it to feel safe and you want it to feel secure. And the blue has that psychological effect on it. So you want to look at your color code or your color palette of your release and your branding. What are the colors that you're going to use? Because based on the colors you use, that's going to evoke certain emotions, right? Now, the next thing you want to look at is what is your symbol? Okay, now your symbol could be kind of one of two things. I like to think about it like this. You have a logo and an icon, and the symbol is the umbrella term, right? So your symbol could be your full artist name or band name logo, or your symbol could be this little icon that's like a little shortened version of it. For example, my band, our full name would be Kira, and then our little icon is the 2 R's in the middle of Kira are facing each other. And so that's like our little icon and then the name. So, okay, the symbol. So if you have colors and symbols, the symbol is supposed to be what they think of when they think of you, right? So this will also help out depending on what kind of feeling you're trying to create. If you're trying to create a very luxurious, affluent, type of brand, you'll want to use those type of fonts. I think they're called the Sarif fonts, the ones that look fancy. You know what I'm saying? They either look like they're a watch company or they're some real fancy designer company. You want to use those type of logos because that evokes a specific reaction whenever people see it. That's why I personally hated this, but when Jaguar did their whole brand shift, they were doing it to try and make them seem like we're the luxurious electric car brand now, right? But their whole way of designing the logos was to try and make it look like it was like luxury fashion, trendy kind of thing, right? Because that evokes a certain emotion. So they've been changing up their branding. That's one way they've been doing it. Okay, so the next thing you want to look at is the setting, okay? So we have what is the color that you're going to be utilizing? What is the symbols that you're going to be using? What is the setting that you're putting this in? So for example, we had a song called 16 Suns. So what was the setting? Okay, the setting was you're here on Earth, but you looked up in the sky and there were 16 different suns in the sky, some really close, some really far away. And so it's kind of apocalyptic. So the color scheme is like orange and red. And the symbol that was in there was obviously our logo. And then like the setting I mentioned. So there's a lot of aspects to the imagery that we're trying to evoke just in the album cover, right? So the visualizer video that we did had the album cover with some smoke and some different kind of things. So we were trying to create a specific atmosphere based on the music, okay? Because the music was based off a dream. So the music sounds very like you're in a dream, and then you have that imagery on top of it. And that's the story of how that song came to be, really. You want to tie all these things in together. So what is the setting? What is the setting that best matches your sound? Let's say you're like doing a 70s style, kind of thing. Maybe the best scenario is like you in a specific old style car, or maybe it's you like in a field somewhere, right? Whereas if it was like the 80s, you would probably be like in LA with some aviators on and you're in one of those drained out sewer spots that the skaters will go to, and you're sitting there with your guitar looking into the sunset. I don't know, right? There's different settings that will match with your music. So you got to identify what are those different settings that are going to help evoke the emotion and the sights and the smells and all that kind of stuff that I really want my brand to encapsulate. Then the fourth thing that we need to ask ourselves, what is our persona? Now I know you may be thinking, well, Dax, I thought you said that we don't want our content to be based around our persona. And really what I mean is you don't want your content to be based around your ego, but every artist has a persona, okay? And the persona doesn't have to be something that's disconnected from you. In fact, the more alike you that it is, the better. Because then you're not trying to create this persona and then trying to avoid becoming the persona. It's just like the persona is a natural extension of who you are, okay? So you want to figure out what are the elements of yourself that you really enjoy, right? And then how do you crank that up to 10, right? So like, for example, if you're really into games, how do you and that's like part of your personality and it kind of leaks into your music a little bit, how do you crank that up a little bit? How do you dress? How do you, act? How do you carry yourself in a way that gets people to have that reaction, that association that you want them to have? Okay, so you really have to think about that. So some people think about the band Polyphia, okay? As individuals in their own personal life, very shy, kind of reserved, funny, sarcastic people. But their persona, cocky, over the top, arrogant, flashy, all that stuff ties in together because their brand represents all those kind of things. So the attitude that they carry themselves with helps tie in the imagery and the colors and all that kind of different stuff that they're utilizing, how they carry themselves. That's the persona. So how are you going to accentuate that stuff? So in the music, you may think, well, are they being someone they're not? It's like, In a way, yes. In a way, no. Right? In real life, would you ever be that over the top, arrogant, and flashy about stuff? Probably not. But when you're an artist, you can kind of push that stuff a little bit further. Just like, I use this analogy all the time, just like professional wrestlers in real life are probably really sweet people. There's tons of them that are, but on the mic, they're going to push things a little bit. They're going to take that part of their personality that usually they kind of keep reserved, and we don't really, we try to be humble and we try not to be arrogant. Sometimes you let that out a little bit, not in a way that is off-putting to the average person, obviously, or even your dream fan avatar, but in a way that establishes who you are. Like, this is actually the best way to look at it. And this is kind of like deep mindset stuff, so just get ready. So you might find yourself going like, whoa, this is pretty deep stuff. I think he's getting me thinking about things. So you need to think about yourself in this kind of fashion. You need to think, who is the person that if I was living my life as authentically as possible and to the fullest and to the max as possible, what would that look like? Think about that for a second. Just like close your eyes and visualize. What do you look like when you are at your just absolute most authentic? You have no anxiety. You have no pressure to feel like you have to conform to any sort of preconceived notion of anything. You're just being you in your purest sense. Do you see that? Do you see that in your head? What does that look like? Who is that person? What do their facial expressions look like? How are they carrying themselves? What kind of clothes are they wearing? Are they social? Are they confident? Are they ready to conquer the challenges that are in front of them? Like, do you see that version of yourself? Whenever you're trying to create your persona, you have to step into that person. So like when I'm on stage, like I move around a lot more. I'm more energetic. I'm more social. I'll look people, a bunch of people in the eye and like make faces at them and engage with them. Now in the off stage portion of me, I'm not going to do that to people. I'm going to kind of keep to myself. I'm not super social. I'm extroverted to a degree. I'm like 50% extroverted, 50% introverted. But when I'm on stage, when I think about who do I see as the most maximized potential version of myself on stage, I look at that person and I'm like, they're having a great time. They're moving around. They're not necessarily just so zoned in on their hand because they know their music and they're just jamming around. I could see that person, right? And so now when I go on stage, I'm trying to step into that image. And that's kind of what perhaps you should do, is step into that image that you're seeing whenever you're trying to create your content, go and perform a live show. Who is that person? If maybe that person that you see with your music is kind of sarcastic and has fun and doesn't take anything serious and is kind of a jokester a little bit, when you hop on stage or you hop behind the camera, right before you do it, this might be very helpful for you. Sit there and just close your eyes, visualize that person that you've just been visualizing, okay? And for those of you that aren't doing it, do this. This is more powerful than you think. Close your eyes and visualize that person and get that image so crystal clear that you can recall it at any moment, right? And right before you go to shoot your content, just close your eyes, take a big deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth, and visualize that person. And when you visualize that person, imagine yourself stepping into that image. Like imagine that image just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and to the point where it's your entire field of vision. It's just you as this fulfilled, maximized person. That's how you step into your persona in a really, really deep way, right? You go deeper and deeper and deeper into that vision that you have of yourself, of who you want to eventually become, as like that, like this is my natural state. Now, obviously, we know that we're flawed human beings and we'll never ever be perfect, okay? And that's okay. That's normal. That we're not perfect. We're not machines, right? And even machines aren't perfect because they're designed by people. Who would have thought? So you get the idea, right? You have to go into this idea of who is this person. And when you really outline that, you're getting your branding crystal clear, okay? Now, the last thing that we need to understand, I'll go out of the super deep mindset stuff. And we'll go into one final thing that helps identify your brand's identity. So we've talked about what are the color schemes that we're using, what are the different symbols, the settings, the persona and attitude that we're going to carry ourselves with. Finally, what I would say is, what is the mission? What is the goal? What is the intention behind a release? Sometimes an album has a specific theme. It's trying to be, there's attention trying to be brought to a specific theme or concept. So that could be the mission. The mission could be the same throughout all your releases. And it's just like our music has a goal. It's not that every release has its own goal. It's that like my entire music catalog is under the same goal of just wanting to create music where people can escape, right? Maybe it's just escapism, which is totally fine. So you have to look at what is the mission that you're trying to accomplish with your music. And when you have all these things working together, you've got all the colors and symbols and all that stuff with the persona and the mission all cohesive and locked in together, you will have very clearly and concisely established who your brand is and what it is. And then from there, when you start to post, you can feel confident. Now, here's a little basic framework that you can utilize when you're posting your fan-centered, story-driven, branded content, okay? One of the things that you can utilize is something that I call hook story action, sort of an adaptation from a Russell Brunson framework. But hook story action, okay? What's the hook? So whether this is a video or a long caption that you're writing out, what is the hook, okay? POV, let's say you write music that sounds like it's from the 80s or something. It's like classic 80s rock or something. It's like POV. It's 2025, but you wish it was 1985. Like that's a hook, okay? POV, you and your friends just found the next jam that's going in the playlist. POV, when the heartbreak hurts and you just miss them because it's a love song or something, right? Or POV, you just don't give an F anymore and you're ready to party. Maybe it's a dance song, The second I get off my POV, the second I get off my 9-to-5 job, and then it just cuts to you like, just doing your dance music, right? Figure out, what is that hook going to be? Now, what is the story? Most of the times, if you're not doing a story in the actual video, you'll do a brief kind of story in the caption, okay? Now, a story could literally be 3 sentences long. Don't feel like you got to write a novel when it comes to creating a story. You can be very concise with it. There's Chinese proverbs that are only 3 or 4 lines long, right? We can figure out different ways to be energetic, right? So let's use this club example, the POV, the second I get off my 9-to-5 job, right? And maybe the story is, have you ever had this feeling? You're just counting down the hours until 5 o'clock so that you can jump in your car and turn up the newest song that you're looking to jam out. That could be the story right there. Now, what's the final part of the formula here? Hook, story, action. So we have the hook, POV, the very second your 9-to-5, or me, the second my 9-to-5 ends. Videos got maybe you in the club rocking out with your music. And then the story says what I was just saying basically about, have you ever had that feeling of you're just counting down the hours, counting down the seconds until you can hop off work and jump in your car and turn the music up really loud? If you're wanting to have the newest jam to add to the collection, click the link in my bio. We've got a new song out. There's an action or a call to action, right? Hook, story, action. What is the framework, what are the different ways that you can insert your content into that framework, okay? So I hope I've given you a whole bunch of tools in your arsenal today when it comes to marketing. It's a late night here. It's almost midnight here. We're doing a late video because it's been very busy over here in the Musicians Ignite studios. We've been helping out a bunch of clients and been doing a bunch of great stuff. But I wanted to make sure that you guys got some great content out there that will help you identify your branding. So if you got some value out of this, make sure to hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all that kind of good YouTube stuff. And if you'd like some one-on-one help figuring out exactly your brand and how to implement that in your content so that you can build up your email list and even monetize that audience, click the link that's in the description. We have a way that you can apply for a one-on-one coaching call. And if that's a good fit, click that and check it out. Otherwise, I will see you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.